Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is in regards to nutrition, and it's gaining weight in the off season. So this is actually for bodybuilders, powerlifters, strongmen, really athletes, anybody who can withstand or has the goal or the desire to increase muscle mass and or strength in the off season. So the title says gaining weight, so it definitely implies muscle mass. However, there also is a way to eat nutritionally to ensure that you can gain strength in the off season with minimal effect on body weight. And this would be for people who compete in weight classes. So like powerlifters, even like wrestlers, where you want to get stronger, but you can't afford to get in much heavier because you're already near the top of a weight class. So as you want to get stronger, that does usually correlate to building muscle tissue. They kind of go hand in hand, but there are ways to get stronger without getting much bigger. But typically some added muscle mass will happen. So in that case is maybe you, last time you competed, you were at the top of your weight class, but you weren't totally peeled or shredded. So you can stand to have a pretty good off season, gain a little bit of muscle, and then just have to diet a little bit harder into your competition to make your weight class this time. So the goal of anyone trying to really gain weight in the off season is your desire is actually to gain usable weight. And this would be mostly muscle mass. Now in strongman, in powerlifting, being heavier, especially strongman, because they do a lot of odd implements and a lot of loading races and stuff like that, and sled drags and whatnot. So having mass helps in that sport more, even if it's just like kind of fat mass. So just because you have more leverage and you can lean into things a little bit better. So they still want to make sure it's usable weight though. So if the person gains, say 20 pounds in their off season, but none of their lifts go up, well, that wasn't very useful 20 pounds. So they want to make sure that their strength coincides with a weight gain, and anybody would want to do that. But the sport of strongman, for example, has a little more leeway of gaining body fat as part of that usable weight, whereas like bodybuilding, fat is not usable in any way whatsoever for you. So it's healthy and you need it in the off season and stuff. You can't stay competition peeled all year. But what I mean by usable is it's not something you can use on your contest. So you can't use it to help you in competing. You have to have all that fat back off. Whereas in powerlifting, there's really no body fat percentage requirement, so you do want to maximize as much of your weight class towards muscle mass as possible, but not be at such a deficit in terms of caloric restriction or energy restriction in order to get down to a super shredded body weight if you don't naturally perform strongly at that body fat percentage. So, for example, if somebody kind of more comfortable, natural, they're strong, like 15 to 20% body fat, which is already still very lean, there's no need for them to get leaner if it costs them strength. So that would be the goal. So whatever your sport is, in bodybuilding, your sport is muscle mass and balance and aesthetics. So that's your overall guiding factor. So no matter what you do in your off season, you should be directed towards improving that. Whereas if your goal is powerlifting, your sport is powerlifting, your goal is strength. So you want to do whatever you have to do in the off season to make sure that it has a positive influence on your strength. So those are kind of like something to keep in mind, is whatever your competition category is, that kind of determines what your number one priority is in your off season. Now, what if you're none of these? You don't compete in any of this. You just want to kind of build muscle and look good. So, well then, what I typically say is kind of pick the aesthetics that you would want. Like, so if you want to look like a bodybuilder, then act and behave as a bodybuilder would. If you want to look like and perform like a strongman or powerlifter, then act and behave like a strongman or powerlifter would. So even if you don't compete, just kind of pick a category, and that'll help give you kind of a direction on what to do. Because too often people use not competing as an excuse to not be consistent. So they'll say, I want to do this, this, and this, but I don't really compete, which is their like leeway to doing things wrong or not doing things all the way or kind of half-assing things along the way. So don't do that. Don't put yourself down just because you don't compete. You should still want to try to be your best and do your best. So pick a category and you can kind of go along with it. So for this podcast. Now, I think anybody who's tried to gain weight in the off season of any of these sports, we can all probably laugh because we've all done or heard of like the dirty bulk, quote unquote, approach, where people just eat everything under the sun. You get fat as hell, and then you have to do a major diet next time for your competition, and it pretty much backfires because you feel like you went up a whole bunch in weight and maybe even strength, and then you had to take it all back off to go to the next competition. And that's very depressing, and like I laugh because we've all been there. So I remember myself, I used to, when I first opened the gym, one of our first members, like in the first year or two, was the owner of the local Domino's Pizzas. So shout out to Chris. So it was freaking awesome because I would work out and then go get like 2 medium pizzas and eat one entirely and probably a slice or 2 of the second one, and then eat that for breakfast the next day. Now, was I putting in such an amazing workout that I needed to eat an entire medium pizza post-workout? No. Absolutely not. I was not Michael Phelps, so I couldn't get away with that much. So I just got fat, and that happens. And it's because we all, not everybody, but most people love to eat. And when given the choice of eating a pizza or not, we're probably going to pick to eat the pizza. So I remember I used to do also, after workouts, I'd go get Whoppers. Not Whoppers, but Wendy's, like double cheeseburger sandwiches. So I think Whoppers are Burger King. But I'd go get like some double cheeseburgers from Wendy's and usually down like 4 or 5 of those. And actually one time I got punished for my gluttony and actually ate one of my veneers. So one of my veneers popped off when I was eating a burger, and actually ate like what ended up costing me about $1,000. So I ate about $1,000 burger from Wendy's. So, damn, that was depressing. But so we've all done that, and if you have done that before, you're well aware now that that doesn't work. So you can't just eat everything under the sun and assume it's all those calories are going to turn to muscle mass and strength. They absolutely will not. Severely enormous amount of those calories are going to be unnecessary, and you're just going to get fat as hell and have to diet all that off, and it just makes it's very fun in the moment, but then you get punished severely for it later. So let's not do that. So the reason why most people rely on quote unquote a dirty bulk is because it's just easier. So it's easier to eat 3,000 calories worth of pizza than it is to eat 3,000 calories worth of chicken breast and jasmine rice. So that's just the truth of it. So doing a quote unquote clean bulk or gaining weight with minimal amounts of fat, it's much harder to do. So you have to eat very clean, and you have to eat very often. You have to be super duper consistent. So it's a much greater level of discipline, and it's not so much fun because you're not going to enjoy the food as much as if you could eat, pizza and ice cream. So I remember I did a challenge with a friend once, and we were trying to eat 5,000 calories a day for 30 days. And that sounds easy if you were allowing yourself to eat like pizza and ice cream and stuff, but our goal was to eat very clean food, very bodybuilder type food. So this was actually at a time where I would have considered myself a bodybuilder. I wasn't really, I was just a big fat marshmallow. But I was 6 foot tall, like 285, 290, and I was wanting to see if I could get to 300 pounds because the 16-year-old Rob always thought it would be cool to have 20-inch arms and be 300 pounds. And so I was so close, so why not try? So the biggest I've ever been is 295, by the way. So I did get up to 295, but I just felt like a fat marshmallow, and I didn't feel like it was worth it. And I have had my arms up to 19 3/4 inch, so I have almost achieved both those goals. But if I would have pushed further, it would have just been a fatty 20-inch arm and a fatty 300 pounds, so that doesn't count. So, but part of our challenge was 5,000 calories a day, all bodybuilder food, and it was freaking miserable. It was not fun. So, because it was so hard to get all the calories in. But actually, I remember one story. I used to use shakes like oatmeal shakes. So I'd take oats, pour them in water, put in like chocolate protein powder, and then over time the water would soften the oats, and you try to drink that, but it was too like mushy and chunky to drink, but it was too soft to chew, so it felt like a horrible, weird consistency that made you gag all the time. But that's what bodybuilders online did, and that's what seemed to be kind of the cool kid thing to do was, oatmeal shakes. And I mean, hardcore. I remember Evan Centopani was doing oat shakes, and I was like, well, Evan Centopani's freaking huge. If it's working for him, it might work for me. So I remember one time in grad school, I was about to go into a class, and I was running late, but I had a rule where I had to drink this shake before I could get into class. And that was it, because I knew if I waited until after class, it would already be too close to my next meal, and I wouldn't even want to get my next meal in. So I'm standing out in the parking lot trying to drink/chew this oat mush, like, blech stuff. So I actually ended up throwing up the entire container of oat mush because my body hated that consistency. There was no good flavor to it. So I threw it all up, and I remember getting extremely mad because it meant I had to make up those calories later in the day. So I looked like probably a complete psychopath throwing up a chocolate protein shake in college parking lot. And that was around everybody. So I was in the middle of a very popular place, just throwing up like a fool. So, but that's the discipline it takes sometimes to try to get in and what you need and push your body to a new level. So if we look at some specifics of the process of gaining weight in the off season, our number one rule is to try to eat clean, but gaining weight and gaining strength is of most importance. And what I mean by this, we'll go further into it here throughout the podcast, is you want to eat clean, but you can't use eating clean as a restrictive, you can't allow it to be restrictive towards your real true goals. So too often I meet bodybuilders who, male and female, they eat very clean, and in the off season they restrict themselves from really being able to grow because they feel like they have to eat so clean all the time. And I can very much understand this mindset because when you're in contest prep, it's all or nothing. You have to be 100% into it. You have to create this mental framework around eating clean as being ultra necessary. And then in the off season, to ask somebody to adapt an entirely new mindset is very rough on people. So, for example, I've had clients tell me, I eat chicken and rice all day and I just can't seem to gain weight. And I'll say, well, why don't you put some sauces on? Why don't you put some sauces on there? Why don't you maybe mix in some oils? Maybe instead of chicken and rice, you can try steak and rice. And they'll all go immediately back. They respond, well, I don't want to get fat. Since when would I have told you to be fat? So, and adding in calories in the way in which we're suggesting, I didn't tell you to go eat a whole bag of Oreos or something like that. So by adding in little bits of extra calories in healthy-ish manners, that's going to help that person actually move forward in their goal. So they get so afraid of being fat that they don't build any damn muscle. What the hell is the point of the off-season? So you have to be willing to loosen up some of your nutritional thoughts. So I remember back when I was 180 compared to 280, is when I'm 280, I allow myself to eat Snickers bar if I need to, if it means I either eat that or I miss a meal. So when my nutritional goals of the off season become don't miss meals. Regardless of what you have to eat, just get calories in. Don't miss meals. Try to make the calories as clean as you can, but you never miss a meal. Whereas in contest prep or dieting mode, what you eat absolutely matters. You cannot eat a Snickers bar. So you have to eat clean food. So you have to prep ahead, you have to be plan ahead and meal prep and everything, and really be on point. So that's the number one rule to think of when you're dieting, when you're wanting to gain weight in the off season, is don't be so restrictive with clean eating that you can't gain weight, or you don't gain weight, or you don't gain strength. But also don't eat such horrible crap that you gain a ton of weight, but you're not really sure if any of it's muscle or if it's really a usable amount of weight. So you have to be somewhere in the middle. Imagine that moderation. That seems to be a pretty universal thing in life. But that's the idea. So let's look at some specifics of this. So if we're looking to gain weight, so we're in a sport where I want to gain weight. So say you're in bodybuilding and you want to weigh 5 or 10 pounds heavier next year on stage, or at your next competition. So typically what I tell people to do is to alternate time frames of trying to gain weight and then trying to hold and solidify the new weight. So you'll hear different schools of thought on this, and it doesn't mean other schools of thought are wrong, and I'm only the one who's right. But some people will try to aim for, like, say, a half a pound a week and do that for 6 months. Oh, good Lord, is that boring. It's so damn hard to monitor because body weight changes every single day by small amounts due to sodium levels, even freaking humidity of the air, dehydration levels. There's so much variance in body weight that it's really hard to track a half a pound. And then also, that's really long, kind of boring, sustained goal. And our body does not respond well to things that are small increments, really long term. And what I mean by this is, if we think of the process of our workouts, is you work out, you beat up the body, which is an extreme in one direction. You then go home, sleep and eat, and allow it to recover, which is extreme in the other direction. So we kind of push, we relax. We push, we relax. If you just try to gain a half a pound for 6 months, that's not really even pushing. It's almost so subtle that very rarely can the body really sustain that very well, meaning that it'll get adapted to that process very quickly, and it'll become harder and harder to maintain that rate. You'll have to try weird, different things. The body just kind of fights against the process because as much as our body doesn't like losing weight, it fights that process. It also fights the process of gaining muscle, because gaining muscle is an amount of work to the body. The body has to work hard to build new structures. So if you try to just do it incrementally small amounts every day, it gives the body greater chances to fight against that process and try to find ways out of it. So I'm a bigger fan of kind of pushing a little bit harder and then we're pulling back a little bit and doing that in stages. I think it correlates better to everything else we do in our life and how our body kind of best operates. It likes meaningful large goals in short bursts. That's kind of the way the body works best. So depending on how long a person's off season is very variable, but you would take roughly the shortest amount of time you would possibly want to have to try to build muscle. And this is even argumentative as 4 weeks. I would say that's already too short. So I would say you more so should be looking for 8, 12, or 16 weeks to where you can really put on some muscle mass. In 4 weeks, what the hell can you really put on? So I have had people tell me, I just got done with a show. I'm going to do a 4-week bulk and then do another 8-week cut and be really in good shape. And I'm like, what the hell are you going to get in 4 weeks? Like, why are you doing this show so damn quick? So you want to give yourself enough time that you can actually build muscle. So again, it's arguable, but let's go with the concept here. And then you can pick your own time frame of 8 to 16 weeks, okay? So then you take 8 to 16 weeks and you want to gain about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds per week on average. So that's about 4 to 6 pounds every 4 weeks. Then you want to use half of that time to kind of hold your body weight and quote-unquote kind of clean up. So let's say, let's just go with 8 weeks and it makes my math easier for me. In 8 weeks, your goal would be to gain 8 to 12 pounds. Let's say you accidentally, quote-unquote, gain 14 to 16 pounds. Well, then during that kind of holding time, you'd actually want to take a little bit of that weight back off because it probably wasn't necessary. And then let's say in 8 to 12 weeks, 8 weeks, your goal would be to gain 8 to 12 pounds. Let's say you gained right in that range. Well, then you just try to hold your weight. So typically we do that for half of the time that it took to bulk. So if I took 8 weeks to bulk, I do 4 weeks to kind of hold and or clean up. If I do, 12 weeks of bulking, I might do 6 weeks of like holding and cleaning up. And then you would go back into the next phase of either bulking or kind of contest prep cutting. So I found that to be extremely, extremely helpful when I was younger. So again, for those of you who don't know, I'm 6 foot tall. I graduated high school at a pudgy 165. So I was not lean, did not have abs at all at 165 at 6 foot tall. Oh, that is depressing. So I'm now 270-ish, 280 pounds. And I'm actually leaner overall body fat percentage than I was when I was 165. So I've gained 100 pounds of muscle mass, 100 pounds of mass to me. So, and I've done it fairly cleanly. I look okay. So I look pretty good. So for those of you who don't know me, I have gained 100 pounds since I was 18, and it looks pretty good. So I do know what I'm talking about in terms of gaining weight. So I'm sure if anybody out there, if you're thinking about trying to gain size and somebody told you to gain 100 pounds and be leaner at 100 pounds heavier, you'd be like, oh, hell yes. And how I did that over the years was that when I was younger, I didn't really know what I was doing, but it ended up being these times where I would kind of push my weight up. I'd feel like a fat marshmallow, so I'd kind of hold there, or I'd lose a little bit of it. So I might gain 20 pounds, take 5 to 8 back off. Then I'll kind of get bored, feel skinny again. I'll start eating again. I'll push another 20 pounds, and then take again the 5 to 8 pounds off. And then once I started figuring out that was really working, I started kind of putting parameters to it, and that's how I'm telling you the numbers I have now. So these are numbers that I have seen firsthand work with my life and firsthand work with clients. So again, we take anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks to kind of bulk. You take half that time to clean up and kind of hold your weight and or drop your weight down to make sure you're in the right range. And again, the range you want to be in is adding 4 to 6 pounds per 4 weeks. That's usually a pretty usable weight gain, where you're going to make sure that you gain muscle and some strength, but you're not going to gain unnecessary fat. Okay? So, that's very effective, and it works great. So if you want to follow that. Now, what if you're in a sport or kind of a body type that you want to get stronger, but you don't want to gain weight? Okay, that's fine. So you want to focus on kind of changing your calories around from training days to non-training days. So on training days, eat more carbohydrates so you have great energy and you can put in big workouts. On non-training days, eat less carbohydrates. So almost maintenance level of calories, with the caveat of ensuring that your protein stays fairly high. So you want to be eating at least 1 gram per pound of body weight, if not more than that, up to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight of protein. And that's a lean kind of body weight. So if you guesstimated what your body weight would be around 10% body fat, eat around that many grams of protein or a little bit more. So your goal then is to watch the scale and make sure the scale does not go down. And if you don't want to go up, make sure it doesn't go up. But you have to track main lifts in your training. So you can't just assume that training in general will make you stronger. It's how you train that'll make you stronger. So you have to track specific lifts, like say squat, deadlift, overhead press, bench press, stuff like that. So if you're an athlete, you might not even need bench press, just lifts that correlate to what your sport is. So you have to track those and make sure that you're getting strength progressions. If you're not, then you have to eat more, okay? You have to let that scale go up a little bit. Now you can diet that right back off before the competition season, but you have to let your body weight go up if it's limiting your strength progressions. Otherwise, you're going to spend your entire off season sitting still, moving nowhere, okay? So if your goal is to get stronger, you have to get stronger. You have to actually track that and make sure you get stronger. Now, it's extremely important for powerlifters who are kind of near top of their weight classes. So too often, sometimes I'll run into powerlifters where they talk about like, oh, I'm at the top of my weight class, I really don't want to go any heavier, so I just want to kind of maximize this weight class and see if I can get stronger. Then they go into their next meet 6 months later and they lift the same damn weights. You just wasted 6 months of your life. So if you're not getting stronger, then you might as well get bigger, because otherwise you're spinning your wheels and not getting any better, okay? So your general daily structure for trying to gain strength / weight in the off season is to eat early and eat often. So eat as soon as you get up, get your body kind of speeding up and get moving for the day. So the earlier you start eating calories, the more calories you can get in for the entire day. And then try to eat often, okay? So muscle mass changes happen all time during the day. So every minute of every day, your body is either building muscle, maintaining muscle, or stripping muscle off. So muscle mass is a metabolically active tissue, meaning your body has to fuel it and feed it. If you don't use it, it won't feel the need to fuel it and feed it, and it'll get rid of it. Okay? So if you're ever in a caloric deficit or you don't have enough calories around, your body will not fuel it and feed it for growth. It'll maybe maintain it, or it'll say, hey, I'm in a calorie deficit. They haven't trained this muscle in a while. I don't feel like we maybe even need it. So it'll start stripping off some muscle from that to save itself from the energy and work that it would have to do to maintain that. So you have to eat often to make sure you have enough food coming in at all times, so that way your body can at least be maintaining, if not actually growing. Okay? You want to focus on lean proteins and carbohydrates. They're usually going to be the best for keeping your hunger levels high throughout the day. Typically, if you eat foods that are high in fats, it's going to kind of kill your hunger level, and it'll be hard for you to get enough calories in throughout the day. So instead, focus on lean proteins and carbs. And then eat clean foods, but the scale and your strength levels are most important. So you have to allow for some calorically dense, quote-unquote, dirty foods if needed to get the scale moving in the direction you need and or your strength moving in the direction you need. You can't restrict yourself by always eating clean and healthy but not actually moving anywhere. Okay? So don't say, oh, I can't get bigger, oh, I can't get stronger, whenever you just keep eating super restrictive foods. Okay? So, biggest thing is to be consistent. So you have to have food in all day, every day, day after day after day, for month after month after month. Okay? You can't fall off on this stuff. It has to be every day. There's no days off from eating. There are days off from training, but there are no days off from eating. So, what I'd recommend you do is actually use a chart. So we have an adherence chart, like a smiley face chart, that you can use to kind of track and make sure you're eating your good meals. So shoot us an email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. We'll send you that chart. So just as you would want to track your efforts for fat loss, you need to be tracking your efforts for muscle building and strength gains. So you don't have to be so restrictive in the types of foods you eat that you feel mentally worn out by the time you have to start dieting for a competition. But you have to be consistent. You have to stay on track with things and actually track your efforts to make sure you're not, eating really well a few days in a row and then taking a day or two off, or we all fall in our own excuses. So we all have excuses where like, I couldn't eat my meal because of this day, or this day I was traveling, or this and this. And you find out of 7 days you're only doing like 4.5 right. That's not going to get you big. So that's not going to work. You have to be consistent. You have to force that growth. So you want to track your adherence and make sure you're doing well. So reach out to us and we'll send you that chart. So that's some general breakdowns. This ended up being about a half hour, so it's not kind of short. But that's some concepts you can use for gaining weight in the off season, is to make sure you're consistent with your efforts. Make sure that the scale and or your strength actually moves. Eat anything you need to get that stuff to move in the right direction, regardless whether it's Oreos, pizza, and ice cream. Who gives a shit? Just get the food in and get the scale and the strength moving in the right direction, and then come back and try to clean up those foods. I've done that several times in my life. I've done it with several clients where we allow them to have more frequent, kind of like dirty cheat foods throughout the week to get their scale and the strength moving, and then later on we start to pull those back. So maybe at first they have 4 cheat meals a week where they can eat anything they want. Then all of a sudden we kind of scale it back to 3, then to 2, and all of a sudden they're looking pretty clean, they're stronger, and they're bigger. So that's kind of the goal. So what your goal is, whether it's to build muscle and or build strength, you have to make sure those move forward. If they don't move forward, you're wasting time. Okay? So allow everything to vary so that you can get that progress. Cool. Okay. So if you're in this process and if you feel like you have any struggles or you need any help with it, always shoot us an email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. We'll be happy to help you. Okay? So create like a structure more specific for you or help to answer any specific questions you have. So please reach out to us. We will help you. Cool. So if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, you can sign up to become a patron of the podcast by donating $10 or more per month towards the podcast. And for a donation, we will send you monthly programming. So for $10 a month, you can get monthly programming. And the programming is specific towards whatever you want. Like we have bodybuilding programs, we have powerlifting programs, we have strongman programs, anything. And they're updated every single month. They have trackable progressions and everything. It's pretty cool. So we even have video tutorials on the exercises. So we're trying to make it as easy as we can for you guys to get monthly programming at just $10 a month. If you'd like to become a patron to get that programming, you can do so directly on the Podbean app. You can send us an email, or you can do a Google search, Become a Patron, Brutal Iron Gym Podcast. So, if you like the podcast, also make sure you share it with any family and friends. So the more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. Okay? You can shoot us an email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful.